Joining us now, Brett Samuels, White House reporter for our partners at thehill.com. Even though she'll step away, Brett, how likely is she to step out of the conversation?
Yeah, Marni, I think, former Speaker Pelosi, obviously one of the most influential Democrats that the party has seen in the last couple decades, really. So, even after she gave up the gavel as Speaker, even after she stepped back as sort of the party leader in the House, she continued to be very influential. We saw that last year, obviously, with sort of the role she played as then President Biden stepped aside as the Democratic candidate, and sort of the behind the scenes role that Nancy Pelosi played there. So she obviously is still a very influential figure in the Democratic Party, somebody that a lot of people really respect. She obviously has the track record to back it up. So certainly I think she's somebody that Democrats will continue to listen to turn to for advice, even if it's not quite as public or quite as front and center as it has been during her time in Congress.
Her claim that Congress has lost its independence, that Republicans just look to what the president wants done. What have members of the GOP party said about those claims?
Yeah, I think if you talk to people like Speaker Mike Johnson or others in sort of leadership roles in the House and Senate in the Republican Party, they would obviously push back on that. They would argue that what they're doing is accomplishing the president's agenda, that any Congress or any Congress where it's sort of the same party in power as the president, that they typically will, more or less align with the president, try to push through that person's agenda. So, Speaker Mike Johnson and others are arguing that there's nothing really out of the ordinary here. There are, a few Republicans, most of them Trump critics or people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, perhaps, who are leaving Congress, resigning their seats, who would acknowledge that essentially Congress has given up a lot of its power, that essentially, they point to when Speaker Mike Johnson sort of essentially took the House out of session for the entirety, more or less, of that government shutdown a couple months ago. Are the argument being from critics that is sort of abdicating the role of the House, abdicating the role of lawmakers to kind of push legislation, push policy. So, there are a small number, I think, of Republicans who would acknowledge that what Nancy Pelosi said there is accurate.
What about the 2026 midterms? What's that landscape starting to look like as we get closer?
Yeah, so, there's a couple of factors at play. On the one hand, you have those newly drawn congressional maps in places like Texas. California is going to, look to redraw their maps. Other places, Ohio, we're looking at Florida as a potentially redrawn map. So those redrawn congressional maps obviously could sway things that may ultimately net out that each party only, gains or loses a seat or two. So that may be moot. But that's one factor to look at. The other factor, of course, is history. The fact that the president's party universally loses seats in the midterms. That's just kind of the way it always goes, that people sort of want to change after 2 years in power for the president and his party. So that's sort of what the GOP is working against. So, that trend would suggest Democrats are poised to gain at least a few seats. There's only a handful of really competitive seats left on the map across the country, but all it takes is, a dozen or so seats to flip, and that would be enough to put Democrats back in power.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.